I'm Renee Williams,
And I'm Billy Thomas.
and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. We have in my book, a really nice treat today because we get to hear from Billy. And so I really enjoy, when he gets to be able to kind of show off a little bit, and kind of talk about what he is really passionate about, which are woodlands.
No doubt, Renee. So glad to be with you today and glad to have everyone with us as well. If you have questions for me or Renee, you can use the chat function to interact with us if you're on Zoom, if you are on YouTube, or a podcast listener. You can hit us up via email at forestry.extension@uky.edu and we can respond to you that way. But yeah, Renee, I'm really excited today. We've got one of our biggest programs that we do as a team coming up starting next month, the Woodland Owner Short Course. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later. But first, we thought we'd kind of start a new series, a little three-part series. We're going to be talking about the value of your woodlands. And what makes them valuable. And, some of that's in the eye of the beholder, but there are some real hard facts that do play into what makes woodlands valuable. So I'm going to start us off today with a presentation on talking about basically what makes woodlands valuable. And then, this will be the first of a three-part series that we're going to be doing over the next couple of months. But this one, is just kind of whetting appetite a little bit, and then serving as a primer, hopefully to everybody think, yeah, our woodlands are valuable. And then that sets us up, hopefully, to get everybody excited about signing up and registering for the 2024 Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course. So, if you want to get out and meet some of the team that is part of Forestry Extension that you've seen on this show over the years, the Woodland Owner Short Course is a great opportunity to do so because almost all of us are engaged with it at some level or another. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first, if you don't have anything else, Renee,
I don't.
I'll go ahead and jump into the first presentation today. All right. So, folks, what makes woodlands valuable? This is the first in a three-part series. I am Billy Thomas, an extension forester here in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And one of the pleasures of my job is being able to talk to others about how important and how valuable our woodlands in Kentucky are. And so I want to kind of cover that with you all today. Again, this is the first of a three-part series. So let's jump right in. So in this first part, we're going to be talking about what do we mean by valuable, right? Valuable can be a little loaded term, if you will. It depends a little bit on your perspectives. But we'll talk about some of the things that make woodlands valuable, or I mean, what is valuable, and it's certainly about woodlands. And then I want to talk a little bit about what some of the key factors that make woodlands valuable. What are some of those attributes that we look for or desirable? And then I want to go into the values that woodlands provide. So not only are they valuable for their own reasons, but they also provide a lot of different values to society, to the environment as well. So we'll cover those in this first part. And then next time, we'll be talking about the interaction of value with woodlands and soils, woodlands and water, and woodlands and recreation. And then finally, in our third part of this series, we'll talk about woodlands and wildlife and those values, how they are kind of connected, as well as timber, non-timber forest products. And ultimately, the ideal is to really get you to think about why woodlands are valuable to you and to share that information with your heirs so that you all can devise a plan and strategy to enhance those woodlands, make them healthier and more productive through active management. So that's going to be our kind of preview of the next two parts in this series, but let's get into the first one. So what do we mean by valuable? I mentioned earlier that it is a little bit subjective. One of the things that often comes to mind when we talk about value is monetary value. And, something has a cash value, or a high cash value, it may be thought of as being very valuable. If you can kind of trade something for money, it might be considered valuable. And certainly woodlands are in that category. They do have monetary value. Now, what that monetary value is going to vary greatly. And it's going to vary greatly on a lot of different factors. And we'll talk about some of those as we go along. But the other kind of examples of kind of monetary value things, gold, rare collectibles, those are also kind of considered, and real estate, which woodlands are certainly one of. Continuing on with kind of what makes or what do we mean by valuable, think about desirable characteristics that something may have. Those characteristics can be something that makes that thing unique or very useful, right? Both those things are really important. And sometimes those items, if you will, have intrinsic value, whether that's a home or a car or your woodland, right? And sometimes those things have value that are really hard to quantify in the market. They may not really pay or get receive the amount of value monetary that they may have from some kind of intrinsic value, right? An example may be if you've got a beautiful landscape like this image shows here, that may mean a lot to you. If this is like a high point on your property and this is your view, how do you really put a price tag on something like that? That it's a challenge, right? So we consider that an intrinsic value that may not necessarily be reflected in the marketplace. It has value just for its own sake, for sure. Another way to kind of think about valuable is that use or service. You know, what can we use that item for? Does it have a significant utility, or is there something about it that really enhances our life or what we're trying to do? Then we might think of it as more valuable. And we think of sometimes of invaluable, right? And that is, again, often when we think about some of those views that you might have from your woodlands, what's invaluable to you is how do you put a price on some of those views? It's really a challenge, and they can be very unique. So some things that we might consider invaluable, right? We can't really put a price tag on them. And while value may be, you know, various and subjective depending on what you care about and what's important to you, I think there's one thing we can all agree on, and that is that our woodlands are valuable and they have many different values. So let's get in and talk about that in a moment. But first, let's look a little bit about why Kentucky woodland owners value their woodlands. And so if you see the screen here on this graphic I have on the left, this is a fact sheet that the U.S. Forest Service produced, and it's part of the National Woodland Owner Survey. So this is a periodic survey of all woodland owners that have registered continuing forest inventory plots on their property. That's where we get our forest inventory analysis property. But the owners of those plots receive a survey, and that survey kind of breaks down many different factors about their ownership of that property. And what you're looking at now is a byproduct of that, of the National Woodland Owner Survey. And this is a breakdown of Kentucky landowners who own more than 10 acres. And sometimes we might think about those a little bit differently than those people that have just, you know, a yard, if you will. And part of that is because some of the programs are tied to acreage size, such as the Kentucky Forest Stewardship Program is tied to properties with 10 acres or more of woodlands. So that's just a kind of a threshold we'll often use. That doesn't mean that properties less than 10 acres are not valuable, because they are. And some might argue that they're even more valuable because the smaller they are to you, right? So per area, they may be a lot more valuable to you. So a little bit in the eye of the beholder. But a couple of things I wanted to point out to you on this fact sheet that they developed. One is kind of the breakdown of the demographics of ownership, right? Most of the woodlands in Kentucky are privately owned, and most of those are within families, if you will, or individuals, as you can see there in the top right. The other thing I want to kind of draw your attention to is in the middle there, that program participation. Again, only 6%, it shows only 6%, if you will, of folks have received management advice. It also shows there's some other numbers here, some statistics, if you will, about the number of owners that are out there, that average size ownership of 59 acres. And then finally, what I wanted to highlight with this graphic is the reasons that woodland owners value, or why they value their property, right? Or what did they say was the reason they owned it, right? What values did they ascribe to their property? And might be surprising to you that aesthetics, either beauty or scenery, might be the very first one and that comes to mind for a lot of landowners out there in Kentucky. It's not timber, it's not wildlife, it is beautiful, right? They want that pretty, they want that scenery, they want that tranquility that woodlands provide. That is the most important thing to at least those that responded to the survey. Next, we'll look at wildlife. That's the second biggest one. And then this is something we see all the time. Woodland owners own their property often to try to enhance it for wildlife values. And as we always mentioned, you can do both wildlife and forest management at the same time and achieve multiple objectives. So that's another reason that our Kentucky woodland owners value their woodlands. And then privacy, that's an important one. It is an escape from the hustle and bustle of the world, and people really appreciate that those woodlands provide that value to them. Another important attribute of ownership for our woodland owners is that family legacy, the interest in being able to try to pass that property down to heirs and keep that legacy of management and stewardship intact, so that that property can be even healthier and more productive in the future. Conservation is another one, and it's listed there as water protection, but that really includes a lot of different things as well. Ecological functions, enhancing biodiversity, storing carbon, all of those are attributes that are valuable from a woodland. Additional thoughts are timber, right? People own their woodlands for income purposes. Maybe that is periodic timber harvests, or other kind of tax benefits they want to try to use. And another important reason people value their woodlands is through recreation. We all enjoy getting out in the woods. There's really nothing like hiking on a nice trail in a wooded area. At least to me, it's very pleasurable. It kind of gets you away from a lot of the distractions in the world, and it lets you kind of focus and really see the natural beauty that we have out there. So those are just some of the reasons that our woodland owners here in Kentucky value their woodlands. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the values that these woodlands provide. And many of these may be obvious to you, but some of them you may not have thought about as well. One that hopefully you'll think about is oxygen production. We have plants out there, right? And these plants, trees, if you will, are doing this amazing thing called photosynthesis. And that's just a beautiful thing that allows them to help generate oxygen. And it's surprising to me, and it may be surprising to you, that trees produce approximately 25% of the world's oxygen. That's significant, right? We owe our lives to trees. The oxygen they put in the air is really important. Now, where does the rest of the oxygen come from? Largely from plankton and other kind of plants, if you will, in the oceans. That's where the rest of it largely comes from. Okay, just to kind of put that in a little more kind of terms that we may be able to get a handle on, a single mature tree can provide enough, a day's worth of oxygen for several people. So that's pretty interesting if you think about that. We need trees, right? And trees do good things for us, and oxygen is certainly one of those things. Another thing, think about all the biodiversity that's out in our woodlands. And you look at this image here of a woodland, and you can just imagine how many different animals and insects and fungi and others are out there just living and doing their thing, right? In fact, 80% of the world's land-based animals and plants need woodlands, right? At some point in their life, they need woodlands. And we've had on this show many times just how important woodlands are to wildlife. We also think about Dr. Larson and him coming on talking about all the insects that are in our woodlands as well. Dr. Crocker talking about all the fungi and other things we have in our woodlands. So there is a lot of biodiversity in woodlands. So that's an important value that woodlands provide. Next, let's talk a little bit about human livelihoods. You may not realize it, but over 300 million people around the world live in the woods, more or less, right? Or in forests, wherever they are around the world. And there's a lot of indigenous communities that are really tied to their local forested area. So just the opportunity to have a livelihood from those woodlands is really important. And they're so important because woodlands are abundant, right? Not only in their existence, but in what they offer. They provide food and shelter, as well as jobs, for millions and millions of people. Another important attribute that woodlands provide is climate regulation. And that can mean, we're capturing sequestering and capturing carbon that's up in the air and bringing it into the wood of the trees. Approximately half of the dry weight of trees is carbon. So that it's really kind of an important attribute of trees themselves. And it helps that they can then store that carbon, sequester it away, and help with climate change. We also can't forget that wood products are a really important source of carbon storage. These wood products can live centuries in our homes and in buildings through desks and flooring and cabinets and other uses that last decades or centuries. So that carbon continues to be stored in these wood products that we produce. A single mature tree can absorb 48 pounds per year of carbon dioxide. That's quite a bit, and I thought that was an impressive stat, if you will. Another important thing, I think, and one I always talk about, is trees are like living air conditioners. And in fact, one mature tree is equivalent to two average central air conditioners. So we can call them air conditioning trees. And you've probably experienced this yourself if you've been out on a sunny day and you're in a field and then you walk into the woods and you just notice instantly how that temperature just drops down. And that's those trees doing their air conditioning for us. So also, trees reduce the need for carbon emissions from heating and cooling by helping to regulate our air temperature. So they play so many important roles in regulating our climate and helping us deal with climate change issues. All right, continuing on, looking at natural hazards mitigation. Woodlands are really important when it comes to helping us deal with floods or heavy rains, if you will, and even strong winds. They can act as barriers. They can act as buffers and absorb a lot of that impact from these natural hazards, keeping it away from our communities and our homes. They reduce soil erosion. They can also help with landslides, reducing those. That vegetation on the ground holds that soil in place and allows that area to function like it should, as opposed to being washed away if there was no vegetation on the ground. Also thinking about water and soil conservation, these are certainly important values that our woodlands provide. Woodlands protect water resources as well as the entire global water cycle. They're important for so many reasons. They are really important from a freshwater standpoint. They help maintain and regulate that water flow so we don't have too much or too little at any time. And many cities actually depend on these local water sources that come from woodlands for their drinking water. And one of the classic examples we use here in Kentucky is Berea College. Berea College owns the woodlands that surround the community more or less, and that is the source for the drinking water for the city of Berea. So just an example of how important our woodlands are to providing water to our communities. Going on with other values that woodlands provide, we've got a few friends on the screen here with us. And got a honeybee up there, as well as a squirrel and some good maple syrup. And it makes you think maybe about food and edible plants that are available that come that are associated with our woodlands. There's so much food out there in our woodlands, not only for us, but for all the animals that live out there, whether we're talking about acorns or berries or other edible plants, or if you're like us and some of our friends here in the state that are producing maple syrup. There's a lot of food that can come from woodlands, and that's really an important thing. There's also a lot of ecological services that our woodlands provide. Some of that could be like seed dispersals we see with the squirrel there. Fortunately, we have a lot of forgetful squirrels, and they end up planting a lot of acorns for us and losing track of where those might be. So thank you, squirrels, for doing your work as far as getting that seeds spread out there. Also think about pollination and allowing that to happen. Just a lot of ecological interactions happen in our woodlands, and they would not happen if those woodlands weren't there. So that's really an important attribute that our woodlands provide. Others, we think about biomass and the energy that we can get from that. I don't know how many of you all may have a pellet grill out there or a pellet smoker. Those are basically using sawdust and compressed wood to generate heat. That's a great use of that byproduct of manufacturing timber, or I mean boards, if you will. So just another example is there is really very little waste in our wood industry. They really do a great job of utilizing that entire resource. And these are really important because they help replace some of these greenhouse gas intensive products like oil and coal. So, if you can choose wood whenever you can, wood is good. Energy production, we have some communities that do heavily rely on wood boilers that can then kind of heat the schools or other community buildings. And they can do it in a much cleaner way than some of our other energy sources. We also think about the wood products and craft materials. Woodlands provide many different examples of wood products that we use all the time in our daily lives. So don't forget about how important that is in our wood industry here in the state. It is significant. And in Kentucky, we estimate the wood industry generates around $18 billion in total economic contribution. So that's a significant amount of economic contribution that our wood industry supplies, and it's all based on the forests and woodlands here in Kentucky. And there's also, you may be a crafter, there's a lot of interesting parts of trees. Sometimes people can find some burls or other things that then can be turned into beautiful bowls or other items. So if you're an artist, you certainly understand and appreciate the value that woodlands provide for your artistic endeavors. And in the end, really, woodlands, we depend on them so much, right? For so many different reasons. They are critical to us. And so I suggest we all appreciate our woodlands. They're an important asset that many people are fortunate to own, and we want to try to help those folks be good stewards of those woodlands wherever we can. So let's talk a little bit now about some of the key factors that contribute to the value of woodlands, right? So these can really impact how valuable a woodland is for various reasons, right? Again, that value is in the eye of the beholder. Sometimes you may be thinking about monetary value, but you may be thinking about maybe recreational opportunities or other values that you have. So it's going to depend on some of these key factors, right? So one of the first one is its location and accessibility. Those can have big impact on the overall value. Certainly the monetary value of a woodland has a lot to do with where it is located. Often we'll see lower cost land in more rural areas, and part of that is just because it's a little further away from so much demand, if you will, on land development. So that is, it varies where your woodlands are located. Has a big impact on how valuable they're going to be, at least from a monetary standpoint, but also from what some of those other attributes they can provide. If you've got a woodland in an area that there are very few woodlands, your woodlands are even more valuable, right? Because they're kind of scarce in your area. So keep that in mind. It's a relative thing, but the location and being able to get to those woodlands does have a big impact on its value. If you can't get around that property and actively manage it or do timber harvesting or recreation, that is going to limit its value. However, if you do have that accessibility, it enhances the value of that woodland. Another thing that comes into play is the size of that woodland. And certainly the size can have an impact on that. Often we'll see, small parcels may go for a lot of money. And then when you buy bigger parcels, that per acre may go down quite a bit. So that size can play into a lot. But that location and size certainly are going to play big factors in its monetary value to others. Some of the other factors that are important to what woodlands provide is what do we intend to use that woodland for? It can have a big impact on it. If you've got a great match for your intended use with that woodland, then it's perfect, right? It's really that woodland's providing those key attributes that you need. Um, One example, you may have an area that that is managed strictly for timber production, right? We have active timber harvesting going on. We're doing management all the time, and that may not be the best setup for pure recreation all the time on that same property. It's not to say you can't have timber harvesting and recreation on the same piece of land, but you may not want to have those exactly going on at the same time, right? So it could limit that value that that woodland's providing to you. Another thing we have to keep in mind are zoning and land use regulations regulations, all of those can have a significant impact on that value of the woodland. If there are restrictions on what you can do with that property because of zoning and regulations, that can impact that overall value of the woodland. Additionally, the quality of that woodland is really important. Not only are we talking about, the size and its location, but what do you have on there? Do you have a very well managed woodland with a lot of high quality timber? You can imagine that would be more valuable than an area that is poorly stocked with very poor species that have not been managed or cared for in the past. So that quality can have a big impact on the value that woodland contributes. And part of that's driven by the different trees we have out there, their species, their age, and just their overall kind of their quality in themselves. And then the biodiversity, right? Woodlands that offer a lot of biodiversity will tend to have a lot more value. Again, a little bit in the eye of the beholder of what you care about, but generally, the more biodiverse those woodlands are, the more valuable we consider them. Couple other ones, water resources, right? Water, everybody likes, well, I don't want to say everybody, but many people like being around water, being near water. It's kind of an instinctual thing for us. We really like being around water. So if you have water on your property, whether that's streams or rivers or lakes, that can make your woodland more valuable. Certainly, it can enhance the species that will take advantage of that, but also it can enhance your recreational opportunities. And then wildlife habitat, like we have our little friend here on the right side of the image. If you have good land that has really good habitat, it can support a wide variety of wildlife. And very importantly, how we manage and care for our woodlands can have a big impact on wildlife conservation efforts. So if you have woodlands that are kind of set up to enhance certain species that may be endangered or in trouble, then that can make a big difference as far as the value of your woodland if you're set up to kind of support those. All right, a couple more recreational opportunities, right? Woodlands that provide opportunities for you to get out and hike and camp and actually be on that property is going to make it more valuable, obviously, right? We mentioned water bodies or maybe some scenic areas that you have on your property. Those are going to enhance recreational benefits as well. Ecosystem services. When we think about all the different things that our woodlands provide, we talked a little bit about how they help filter the soil. I mean, excuse me, the water when we have floods and other heavy rains. But they also do an important job in the air as well. So they are just important in so many ways as far as keeping our ecological systems going and maintaining a healthy status. All right, a couple other key factors. Let's think about carbon sequestration. We talked about that a minute ago. And the graphic on your right is a graphic from the Nature Conservancy, and it's talking about how we can go about managing our woodlands in the eastern United States, the Appalachian area, and to do it in a way that helps sequester more carbon. And based on science and a lot of hard work by a lot of people, we have a pretty good handle on how to go about doing that. So they have just released a new program here in Kentucky, the Family Forest Carbon Program that is now eligible that the Nature Conservancy and the American Forest Foundation are partnering on. And it is an opportunity for some of our landowners that may want to contribute or participate, if you will, in some of those carbon offset type programs. Again, in the end, the value of woodlands is subjective and it's going to vary based on your goals and your perspectives. But as I said before, I think we can all agree that our woodlands are valuable for a wide variety of reasons and they deserve our attention and they deserve our support wherever we can help them. So this concludes our first part of our three-part series on woodland values and why woodlands are valuable. Next time, we'll talk on woodlands and soils, as well as woodlands and water and woodlands and recreation. And then we'll wrap up in a couple of months talking about woodlands and wildlife, as well as woodlands and timber and non-timber forest products. And in the end, we hope to have a good conversation about why you care about woodlands and what values you place on woodlands. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Billy. I greatly appreciate that. I really like that presentation that you made, but we've said this, and if anybody has watched the show before, they have heard us joke about this, then you'll come up and say trees are the answer, and I say no matter what the question. And But literally, you just basically proved some of that. Just all the benefits that trees provide. And I don't think a lot of people like think of it, you're like, oh, it's a tree, I love it. It's nice. You can just sit underneath it. But people don't actually see the forest for the trees is that, and that may be where that expression came from. I'm not 100% sure, but that would make sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, Renee. And I think part of it is to a lot of people, it seems like we have an abundance of forests, right? There is
Right.
no issue. So why do I even have to concern myself about those forests, right? And I think that is a big part of it. We do have about half the state covered in forest land, and so people just kind of take it for granted. I think sometimes, but I think many of our owners out there they value their woodlands, for those various reasons, right? They just need some help and some assistance when it comes to trying to do the right things from a tree or a wildlife perspective, right? And fortunately, we have professionals out there that are available to work with landowners to make their woodlands more valuable for whatever they care about. So, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes about the woodland owner short course. But I think you're totally right. I think people kind of might just kind of glance over or overlook those values that our woodlands provide.
Mhm.
Uh,
So there are some questions. Any thoughts on carbon credit contract opportunities?
Yes, I have a number of thoughts on those. And one thing I will say is that that has been a very evolving landscape over the years. Having been in Kentucky for, quite a few years now, I've seen a number of these carbon programs come and go over the years. And
Right.
so the thing I would always caution folks is really make sure you know what you're getting into, right? That these contracts can vary. They can vary based on the length of time, also what restrictions that places on your land. So I don't want to discourage people from participating in them, but I do want people to go in with their eyes wide open and make sure they understand what they're getting into. And fortunately, here in a few weeks, we're going to have a whole webinar on that. Dr. Jacob Mueller is going to be doing a presentation as part of the Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course on basically carbon and woodlands. And one of the things he'll be talking about are some of these programs that are out there. But the one that's recently available in Kentucky is the Family Forest Carbon Program. And again, that's a partnership between the Nature Conservancy and the American Forest Foundation, who really oversees the American Tree Farm System as well in the U.S. So those two have partnered to kind of roll this program out, and it's in Kentucky. So, I hope that answers your question. I think there are some opportunities for some landowners with these programs, but just make sure you know what you're getting into. And if you really want to know more, make sure you sign up for the Woodland Owner Short Course so you can get that whole presentation on it.
Definitely. I think that is check. That's the only question that we had in the chat pod. But Billy, I really appreciate you doing this three-part series. You can kind of open, and I know today was kind of like an overview, but you can kind of open people's eyes to what trees do provide. And it's not just the tree themselves. It's very different aspects of the forest. So I greatly appreciate you doing that for us.
Well, thank you, Renee. It was fun to do that, and I'll look forward to continuing the three-part series over the next couple of months.
But we have something coming up that anybody, if you are a woodland owner, you need to participate in this.
Yeah.
That is the Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course.
It is, Renee, and I'm so excited about this program that we've got coming up. This is a program that we have been working on for many years, right? Our team works on this all the time, and we roll this out every summer, and we have been doing so for more than 20 years. This is our 21st year of doing this program. It has changed over the years quite a bit. It now has a kind of a split format where we do some online stuff before we get out in the field. And I think that's helped save people a lot of time. But it is a lot of fun to work on this program with the whole team and so many of the partners that are out there and available to work with folks here in Kentucky. And we'll talk about those as we go on.
Okay, looking forward to it.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and get on this then. All right, so folks, we want to talk today about the 2024 Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course. This is a once a year opportunity for you to get a tremendous amount of information about woodlands. Whether you're a woodland owner, a county extension agent, or a woodland enthusiast or wildlife enthusiast, then the Woodland Owner Short Course is for you. So I want to give you a quick overview of this and encourage you to register. The other thing I'll ask is if you know of woodland owners in Kentucky, please let them know about this. Many of them may not know that this is an opportunity available to them, and the amount of information and the connections and resources they can get from this program will be invaluable. All right, so let's get into it. First, I think it's important to set the groundwork a little bit. Our woodlands are important. They are really important for many different reasons, right? One we often think about is just how much area they take up. Half of Kentucky is considered woodlands or forest land. That's a lot, right? Nearly half the state is covered in woodlands to some extent. They're also really important from a wildlife perspective. We know that many species of wildlife, whether they're game or non-game species, depend on woodlands at one or more points in their life for survival. Woodlands help control our air or our flooding. They can kind of mitigate some of our flooding. They can help clean and purify our air as well as our water. So those are important things that our woodlands provide. They're also really important from an economic standpoint. Our Kentucky forest industry here in the state relies heavily on the woodlands that we have here and those private owners that are growing those trees. And as all that comes together, it creates an economic contribution of over $18 billion in Kentucky on an annual basis. It also in total employs over 50,000 Kentuckians. So it's a big deal. Woodlands are important, right? Woodlands are important for a variety of reasons. And woodlands are mostly owned by individuals, right? These are individuals. They may be families, it may be husbands and wives, it may be cousins, but it's family units for the most part are the main owners of our woodlands here in Kentucky. And unfortunately, our woodlands are often treated as a bank account in times of stress or if we need to kind of get some money quickly. And that's not a good way to kind of go about managing any asset, certainly not with our woodlands, because the timing of when you do that could have very detrimental impacts on what you want from that woodland going forward. It's also important to note that our woodlands are facing many threats. So if we don't do something about some of these threats, our woodlands are not going to be left in a good shape. And I don't think you're going to be happy with what's left behind. And one of the things that we have learned over the years through a lot of work of a lot of foresters and wildlife biologists and other natural resource professionals is that if we can make our woodlands healthier and more productive through active management. So the key is getting the right management for you that works for your woodland. And that's where a lot of our natural resource professionals can really shine and help you. All right, so some of you may have seen this graph before, but this is a graph developed by the U.S. Forest Service. It comes out of the National Woodland Owner Survey, and they survey woodland owners across the United States. So this is the one for Kentucky, and this is just looking at landowners with 10 or more acres. So these are some of the attributes of owners with 10 acres or more here in Kentucky. And you might look at it and you can kind of see how you might compare if you're a woodland owner or if you know of woodland owners. But there are a couple of things I wanted to kind of point out to you. One is this management advice. Only 6% of our woodland owners indicated that they had received some type of management advice through some type of program, through some kind of woodland or wildlife management program. 6%, that's not much, right? That means a lot of folks out there are not connected to the resources that can help them be good stewards of the property. The other thing I want to point out is there is very few management plans out there, right? 3%, that is not very many plans at all out there, considering how many there could be. And those plans are really important, getting people set up for managing their woodlands. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, but that's an important kind of step in getting those woodlands cared for. And finally, looking at that cost share program participation, only 2% of eligible people were participating. And what that means is there's a lot of folks that are missing out on both technical and financial assistance to help them be good woodland stewards. And one of the things we try to do with the Woodland Owner Short Course is help these landowners make those connections. So there's some three kind of key goals we have for the Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course. And the first is to raise the awareness of just how important our woodlands are and as important, how vital a role the actual woodland owners play in that, right? These woodland owners are the ones who get to decide what happens to that property. Is it going to be well managed and cared for, or is it going to be abused or neglected, right? They get to decide, and we need to support them and help them in any way we can because we all benefit from having good, healthy woodlands. And then we want to try to educate woodland owners about how to go about managing their woodlands and all the different programs that are out there and how to kind of get connected and to work with that is an important part of that. But basically educating you on what you can do in your woodlands and how it might work for you and your family on your individual woodland. Basically, we're trying to demystify woodland management through the Woodland Owner Short Course. And then finally, we hope to connect you all, the woodland owners or other woodland and wildlife enthusiasts, to the natural resource professionals that are out there, as well as the organizations and peers that are available to work with you. And that's something that many people are so unaware of. It's just how much support is available to meet with you on your own property, help you devise a plan for your property, and help you care for that land going forward. So we hope to achieve those goals through the Woodland Owner Short Course, and we hope you will join us as we go through 2024. So the way the Woodland Owner Short Course is set up in 2024 is we have 5 evening webinars, and those are occurring on Tuesdays and Thursdays through the middle to end of June. And all of these webinars are going to be recorded. So if you register for the program, we will have recordings available that you can view if you're not able to view them live with us. And we've tried to keep these programs tight to about 1 hour in the evening, and we're going to have them from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time to make it available for folks maybe in Western Kentucky, so that once they get off work, they can join us as well. But our very first one is going to be on June 11th, and myself and Laurie Thomas are going to be presenting that evening, and I'm going to be going over the kind of the woodland management process. And I want to kind of highlight to you all basically who all the players are when it comes to managing woodlands, kind of the steps that we need to take to ensure that we're not wasting time or money along the way. So we'll go over kind of that process of managing woodlands here in Kentucky. And then we'll have Laurie give us a crash course within the short course on tree identification. With more than 120 native tree species in Kentucky, identifying trees can be challenging. Fortunately, Laurie's got a great approach to making it where you can identify key characteristics, and she teaches you basically that tree identification process. So that's what we'll be doing on June 11th. And again, we're going to do that in a real quick 1 hour format, and we hope that you all will be joining us live. But if you can't be there live, then you can catch the recording of it. Next, we're going to have on June 13th, we're going to have Dr. Ellen Crocker, and she's going to be talking about woodland health. And we have Dr. Crocker on From the Woods Today all the time, talking about forest health and woodland health. And she is certainly a really great speaker for this. She has a great forest health lab here at the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources Extension. And she's going to be talking about some of the potential threats and challenges that our woodlands may be facing from a health standpoint, and some of the things that you can do to try to help safeguard your woodlands so that they'll be as healthy as possible. So that's going to be on Thursday, June 13th. And again, these will be recorded in case you can't be there live. And then the following week, on June 18th, we're going to have another reoccurring guest on From the Woods Today. We're going to have Dr. Matt Springer. Matt is our wildlife specialist here in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, and he does a lot of work on wildlife habitat, wildlife damage efforts, and he'll be talking a little bit about both of those, but basically how you can manage your woodlands in ways that will benefit a variety of species of wildlife. And we know that many woodland owners own their property for wildlife reasons. So don't miss that. If you care about wildlife, then you'll want to make sure to join us then on June 18th. And then following on June 20th, we're going to have Dr. Jacob Muller, who's been on the show many times as well. And Dr. Muller is going to be talking about carbon and climate change and woodlands and how all those kind of interact together. Dr. Muller is leading a very large project at Robinson Forest for the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources on adaptive silviculture for climate change. So not only does he have a lot of background and experience in this, but he's also working heavily in this area right now. He's also got a whole series of carbon related publications that'll be soon coming out. He's been working with some colleagues in Ag Econ here at UK, so he'll be probably talking about those, and he'll also be speaking about some of those programs that are out there right now, some of those carbon offset programs, and give you a chance to kind of ask some questions about those as well. So don't miss that one on June 20th with Dr. Jacob Muller. And then on June 25th, we're going to have Dr. Amanda Gumbert with us and John Schultz. And so Dr. Gumbert is with us here at UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources Extension. And Mr. Schultz is with the Kentucky Natural Resources Conservation Service. And we've had John on here as well as Amanda numerous times. I'm talking about a variety of things. But for this webinar, we're going to be talking about kind of that intersections of woodlands and water quality. And Dr. Gumbert's going to be sharing some of her expertise on some of the things that we can be doing to ensure that we have both healthy woodlands and riparian areas. So we'll look forward to hearing from her, as well as hearing from John on Kentucky NRCS. And the NRCS office, the Natural Resources Conservation Service office, a federal USDA agency, has branches all across the nation. And the one here in Kentucky does a lot of good for woodland owners here in the state. They have a lot of technical and financial assistance that's available to woodland owners here in Kentucky. So make sure that you join us on June 25th for this presentation by Dr. Gumbert and John Schultz on woodlands, water quality, and NRCS programs to support woodland owners. So that will conclude our 5 evening webinars. Again, each of these webinars is going to be recorded, so if you register for the program, you will have access to the recordings as well. And then once we get through all of these online sessions, we hope that you are really kind of primed to get out in the woods with us and with some of our many partners for one of 2 field sessions. So we have 2 field sessions that are going to be taking place. The first one's going to be on July 13th. And that's going to be at UK's Robinson Forest. And the next one's going to be on August 10th at Roundstone Native Seed in Hart County. So the Robinson Forest in eastern Kentucky and Breathitt County, and the Roundstone Native Seeds in Hart County, more kind of central, a little west of E-Town. So it's we've got a good selections for you. So you'll register and you'll have access to all 5 live webinars as well as the recordings and your choice of one of these field sessions. You won't go to both of those. You'll pick one that you want to go to. And I would encourage you all, we have limited capacity at the field sessions. So if these are something that's important to you, register now for the Woodland Owner Short Course, because there's a good chance that both those field sessions will fill up by the time they roll around. So if you think that's something you want to participate in, make sure to register as soon as possible for those. And then I wanted to highlight on the left here all of the partners that support the Woodland Owner Short Course. And again, this is a long-term program that's been going on for a long time, and it couldn't happen without the support of all of these partners that you're seeing on the screen. I want to mention a few of them that play prominent roles, as well as roles that you will see at the field sessions. We're going to have with us the Kentucky Division of Forestry, one of our main partners. And when it comes to woodlands and woodland management in Kentucky, they're going to have professional foresters out there with us on those field sessions. And they're going to be leading the groups. We're also going to have representatives from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. They have biologists that are available to work with woodland owners, and they're going to be leading groups as well. We're also going to have consulting foresters that are members of the Kentucky Association of Consulting Foresters, and they're going to be talking about kind of how they help woodland owners manage their property. We're going to have representatives from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, local representatives there, talking about the programs and how those programs are available in your area, depending on where you're at. And then finally, we'll have the Kentucky Woodland Owners Association, one of our lead sponsors of the Kentucky Woodland Owners Short Course. This is a fabulous organization that works very hard on behalf of woodland owners in Kentucky, and you're going to get to learn a little bit more about what they do at the Woodland Owners Short Course, and I can't thank them enough, as well as all the other partners and sponsors of this program that I didn't have a chance to kind of go over. There are a lot of us that contribute to this program, and a big thanks to each of our partners out there. They work very hard to put these programs on. These field sessions do occur on weekends, on a Saturday, so many of these people are working overtime to be out there with us, so we certainly appreciate them being a big part and supporting the 2024 Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course. And then finally, I'm going to wrap it up and tell you to register now. We've got a link there, and we can share links elsewhere. And if you follow us on social media, you've probably seen some announcements. But please help us spread the word. If you know of woodland owners in Kentucky or county agents or others that would benefit from learning more about woodlands and wildlife, encourage them to also register for the 2024 Kentucky Woodland Owner Short Course. And we'll hope to see you online and in the field. All right, Renee.
Yeah, I love the way the two programs that you did went together, because you talked about how trees are important and then how you can actually learn why trees are important in every kind of aspect. And so I think if you're a woodland owner, you really need to come to the Woodland Owner Short Course if you haven't already, because you will have everyone at your fingertips. Like if you're frustrated because you're trying to get one place and trying to go someplace else and trying to get different items, you're going to have all of those people that you're probably trying to round up in one room, so it's well worth it.
I would certainly agree. Obviously, I think a lot of the program, but Renee, you are totally right. Come to the program, get that help, get those resources. People tell us every year, Renee, once it's over. I had no idea there was so much help, so much resources, so many programs available to help me be a good steward of my property. And I think our landowners really want to be good caretakers of their land, right? They really do. They want to do right by the land. The
Mhm.
Woodland Owner Short Course can help them do that.
Right. Definitely. Definitely. So, Billy, if you can put that link in the chat pod, so anyone who would want to sign up, and if you just want to do the online sessions only, that's fine. But what I
Oh,
really like, and I think I said this week, last week, was that you can do the online sessions and they're going to train you some information, teach you about what you need to know. And then you're actually going to see it in the field when you pick one or the other. And we're going to feed you a great lunch, and you get a bunch of resources and information, as well as the people from each of those partners that will be there. So it's definitely worth and probably most of the funds that we're getting is actually going for lunch. So it's not really, it's not really that expensive as compared to other things that you might do.
right. No, I mean, it is a real bargain. I've seen the prices on some of these programs in other states, and they're in the hundreds of dollars, right? But fortunately, we have some great sponsors that help us kind of keep the costs low. So a big thanks to all of our sponsors that really help, offset those costs. I want to make it as accessible to everybody as possible. And you brought up a great point, Renee. I think I may have failed to mention. You can just do the online sessions, right? If for whatever reason the field dates don't work for you, that's okay. We understand, but you can still get those 5 online sessions. I think that's only like $10
It
just to
is.
register. I mean, so it's a steal. It really is to get that content, right? If you can't get out in the woods with us, still participate in the online sessions. And we have more capacity on the online sessions anyway. So please think about that. If you can't go to the field events, that doesn't mean you can't register for the short course, right? You can participate in the online sessions only.
like you've said, the short course has evolved throughout the 20 years or so. And and I've seen it evolve too with probably the 18 I've been here. But because we used to just do all field, and there was a lot of them, but now we kind of, take it where you can do the split. COVID kind of, I guess you could say, helped in that way, where people, kind of knew, and I think you can actually sometimes show things you can't show in the field online and vice versa. So I think it actually works out to be that hybrid approach actually helps people. They learn it and then they get to see it, and that just kind of doubles your knowledge in my idea of it anyway.
Oh, no, I agree with you. And a lot of those changes, Renee, have been driven, yes, COVID played some in that, but we really, we survey folks at the conclusion of the short course, and we try to use that feedback to make adjustments and tweaks to enhance it, right? I mean, we're trying to do this to help woodland owners, county agents, and others here in Kentucky. So, we listen to what you all say, and we try to make those adjustments where we can.
Speaking to listening what they say, you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com. And if you have a show idea, we will listen to that, take that in consideration. And you never know, your topic might be on the next show. You never know. We've done it before. We'll do it again, I'm sure. But there's a little survey on there that you can click and you can upload pictures. Say you see something that's weird in your woods and you're like, what is that? You can upload that and send that to us as well. And you can also binge watch us for days if you wanted to. I don't know. I feel sorry for you if you want to binge watch us for 200 episodes, but you can. And so, but you will get, no, seriously though, you will get a lot of wealth of information from all of the different guests that we've had on for the last 200 episodes.
201 now, right? Yeah.
201, exactly. So, but we greatly appreciate you joining us today. And Billy, awesome job. 2 topics in one show. Great job doing both of those. We really
double dip. Yes.
Double dip. We really appreciate you doing that. But we kind of felt like they went hand in hand. Yeah. And it's really good to do both of them, in one show. But I guess we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Sign up for the Woodland Owner Short Course.
There you go. It's in the chat function. Bye. Bye.
From the woods today.